Hey guys, welcome back to Draw Along Doodles with Walker. Today you're going to need a pencil, an eraser, a regular, and a fine point Sharpie. We're going to need the pencil and eraser first, and then we'll come to these a little bit later. So we're going to be making a three-dimensional pot, and in that pot we're going to put some cacti. So we're going to start close to the bottom of your paper, not all the way at the bottom, but close. And we are going to create a long ellipse or an oval that stretches almost from the left to the right. It's going to leave a little bit of space on both sides. Now, really important is that this does have the same curve on both the top and the bottom. What you absolutely don't want to have is a hot dog or a circle. So those are the two extremes. Either way is not what you're going for. If you're like me and you go, "Ooh, I could have rounded that a little bit more," then you can go in and do it. That's the beauty of a pencil. All right, so this is the open part of our pot. We're going to come in and get the sides. So I'm going to come add a side down from the very side of that ellipse and a side down. This is going to create the little lip of the pot. Now I am going to go exactly parallel to the curve right there. So I'm tracking because this should be the same width all the way across. And then when I've got it, I can come in and erase a little bit of extra. Okay, now you're doing your best you can, but it may not be exactly perfect. You're just doing the best you can. All right, I'm going to come from here and I'm going to create the bottom of my pot. And to do that, I'm going to come in a little bit from the side and I'm going to come down at a very slight angle. I'm going to come in a little bit from the side and down at a very slight angle. Okay, so now I have a three-dimensional pot. The key for me now is going to be coming and putting these in so that they look like they're sitting in the pot. One of those things means I'm going to need to overlap. Remember, overlapping is when we have something in front of or on top of another object to show depth. So you can choose whether you want these to go to the left or the right or the center, but we're going to place them in order. So I'm going to start with one of those big, I like to think of them as bubble cactuses. So I'm going to come close to the bottom of that area. And I'm going to make myself a big bubble cactus. So it's like I'm drawing a balloon. Now, I'm going to go ahead and erase the part of the pot that's in there so I won't get distracted. And now I'm going to come in and I'm going to add the lines of definition. So I'm going to start in the center and I'm going to come down the center with just a little bit of it curved towards the right. I'm going to come another one from the center at the top, curving more. Ooh, sorry, I meant to say curving to the left. And then my last one on this side, curving to the left. Now I'm going to repeat that process of getting more and more curved, but I'm going to do it on the right hand side. So I'm coming and curving, coming and curving. Okay, now I'm going to give myself a few rocks that are coming up and covering the bottom. Sometimes you'll see those planted in rocks. And in a little bit, you and I will go back and get the spikes. Okay, the next cactus I'm going to come in and put is the cactus that seems to have all the little tiny cactuses coming off of it. Almost, they look like ping pong paddles, or I suppose pickleball, as that is so popular. So I'm going to start a little bit higher up than this cactus, because as things go behind other things, they do start further up on the paper. So I'm going to make that first one. It's a long U shape. I'm going to erase the back where it comes through. And then I'm going to start creating my little pieces that come off. So I'm going to make a teardrop shape that doesn't quite close. And then a little teardrop rainbow on top. So there's one side growth. Let's get a side growth over here. So we're going to come and swoop up with our teardrop and then let it swoop down, kind of like a puppet arm, just a silly Gumby arm. And we're going to have a little side growth over there, curving and attaching. Then let's get one right here. So I'm going to come up, widen it out a little bit. And it's okay if you run off the paper. And then I'm going to get one more right there. Okay. So we'll come back in here and add our spikes and whatnot in just a little bit. Okay, the last one is kind of tricky if you don't have any space left, which is really what you're supposed to have because you want everything to be overlapped. So I'm going to come to the back and I'm going to pretend that it's starting about right there in my pot. And I'm coming up, then I'm coming up around and down. And now I want to angle this a little bit more. So it's a little bit more of a diamond than it is just an upside down U. Okay, now we're going to get the little growth off of this. So we're going to start side and side, and then we'll come to the middle. So I'm going to swoop out, curl under, and attach. Come to the other side, swoop out, curl under, and attach. And then in the middle, I'm going to come up, down, up, down. So it's like a little bird that's flying, and then I'm going to curve across. So we're seeing it foreshortened. We're seeing the very front of it, like if I showed you the front of this pencil, as opposed to seeing it from the side. All right, so let's come and add the rest of these. They're going to get just ever so slightly bigger as we go down. They're not going to shrink. So we're coming across and curving and back in. Now yours may be a little bit shorter than mine, or yours may be a little bit taller than mine. That's totally fine. You just want to be consistent about your spacing. So it's not like there's an exact number that you have to have. You just want to be consistent with how you're spacing them. Now, if you're like me, sometimes it can be a little tricky turning to the other side. And depending on how close your other tall cactus is, you do possibly need to lay these in front of it or behind it in that overlapping. All right, so obviously we know that all these middles are gone. So I'm just going to go and not fully erase them, but get rid of them so that when I start sharpieing, I'm not going to be totally distracted. All right, now let's come and make those little leaves in the middle. So I'm going to actually do the bottom part first. So there's the bottom part of this one. Then there's that curve and that one. They're kind of like gentle smile lines. Not crazy, wild, but gentle. Alright, now I'm going to do the small smile in the middle of that one, above it. Alright, now we're going to curve up and down, up and down. Repeat for the next one. Curve up and down, curve up and down. So we're getting all the way across. Okay, so from here, we're going to be coming in and we're going to Sharpie. Right now, just worry about this guy. We're going to need the thin Sharpie in just a minute when we go back and work on getting the next part. So I'm going to pause right here. You can pause your video as well to Sharpie, and then I'll catch up with you in just a minute. All of the pencil, because now we're done with those pencil lines. Those were just our starter. So I'm going to pause again. You can pause as well to erase your pencil. All right, so I've erased everything. And you'll remember it really helps to erase a small section at a time if you are somebody who's pushed down really hard. All right, for this next part, I'm going to use my thin Sharpie to create my little spikes. Do remember that that is a felt tip. And in order for the ink to come out properly, it needs to be clearly vertical. It can't, you don't have to be 100% this way, but it can't be laying on its side. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do this big one right here. And it has like sets of large spikes. And of course, it's a plant, so it's not always identical. But it's got sets of big spikes coming from the center lines right there. Okay. Now I'm going to keep going on each of these and add these center spikes. I like to add them with a thin Sharpie just because it gives you a little bit of differentiation in your line so that you've got some thick, some thin, and it kind of lets the viewer know what's the most important thing I have to pay attention to. However, if you're in a situation where you only have a thick Sharpie, that's not an absolute deal breaker. Just do it with whatever you have. So we're almost there. And you'll notice I'm kind of putting them towards the middle of the row before it. That way it's got enough room where it's not just overlapping. I'm kind of alternating who is higher and lower. And obviously, because it is overlapping with the plants that are behind or around it, you are going to get a situation where some of it goes over onto a different plant. Now, I had a couple people ask. I have added some little rock details down here inside my pot. You're welcome to do that. I just felt like that would be a little bit more texture to have for my sweet little cactus. All right, coming along. Have you ever tried to keep a cactus alive? They're supposed to be easy plants to keep alive, but sometimes when it gets really rainy in Alabama, I feel like it's too rainy and I cannot keep them alive. Which probably says more about my gardening than it does about the cactus. All right, we've almost got this one. We're on our last two sets of lines because remember we are doing the edges here. And then will come out. Here we go. All right, one cactus done. Next up, we're going to come and we're going to put our little V's with a little line in between. So we're going V and up. So we're going to sprinkle those all over this cactus. It's got a slightly different structure for its spikes. So they're not all exactly the same. And remember, you are trying to stay in the same size family as opposed to like one is giant and one is really small. And if you're going into one of the arms that's twisted, you want to angle those with the arm so that it's growing in the direction that your arm is going. Or right here, it starts to twist up and to the right. So I'm going to let it twist up and to the right. And it's okay if some of them get a little sloppy or get messed up. Remember, you're not competing with anybody else. You're just competing to do better today than you did yesterday. And if you do that, then you have been successful. But every day is going to be a little bit different. And everybody's picture is going to be a little bit different. Almost there. Okay, now this succulent doesn't have spikes, so it's good as it is. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in and we are going to get a little bit of shading on our cactuses just based on where they're overlapping. So you guys should have one of the big marking crayons in your cart at the table. And if you've got yours positioned similarly to me, then that'll be simple. But it's also simple just to look and see what's in front. So point to your cactus that's the furthest in front, the most in front. Okay? Where it overlaps with the other cactuses, we're just going to put a really gentle gray shadow. So it's not a ton, it's just really gentle. And remember, you get it gentle by barely pressing down. Okay? Now, this second one, the one with the big arms, it has a couple places where it's overlapping itself. So we're going to come in, and once again, we're going to have really gentle shadows where it overlaps itself so that we're starting to add that dimensional look. And this one, we also see some of those overlaps, but it's hanging down. So we're going to get a little bit of shadow underneath the pieces that are hanging down on either side. And then a little bit underneath that centerpiece. Oh, look at you. All right. So from here, you've got this part finished for now. The next thing we're going to think about is we're going to think about the psychedelic background because we're going to do a big contrast.